This is a two-part video about building a RAG, where part one of the video, I'm going to show how I will build a data ingestion pipeline. This is required to populate a vector database with vectorized data from the data source. And once that's built, part two of the video, I'm going to show how a RAG pipeline, whereby a chat, an AI agent that handles chat, is going to respond to the chat with data from a RAG database, which is a vector database. Now, first I have to show the data source. The data source is in Excel, is in a Google Sheet spreadsheet. So in this data source, I have this is a product list in Google Sheet where I have a list of products like product name. So the data within this list will be product name, category, SKU, price, and so on. So this will be ingested into the RAG pipeline where it will be stored in a format where LLM can understand. How to do that is that in any end, I have built a data ingestion pipeline. This workflow will execute once I click on this button before I go on. So in this pipeline, first I need to have an N8N node to read data from the Google Sheet. And so there's a credentials, log into the Google Sheet, log into my Google Sheet account, and I specify which Google Sheet that I want to read from and which sheet. Okay. So what needs to be done when you have a raw data that is in the form of a spreadsheet? You need to split the data or transform the data. So here I have an N node that takes data from Google Sheet. Okay. And I'm going to split all these columns that is in the Google Sheet into two columns. So here I have built this data mapping node to map a few columns into this field, this data field called content, whereby it has got product name, category, and so on. And then I have another field called metadata, okay, which has got the category from the spreadsheet. Okay, so these two data fields, I'm going to store it in a vector database by having another node called the Supabase vector store. So my choice of database that I'm going to use is Supabase, which is a cloud-based Postgres. And to connect to this Supabase, I have to set up a project. And so I have set up a project where in Supabase where I will connect to it using this URL. Okay, so copy this and put it here. So I have to tell this N node that I'm connecting to this URL. This URL represents my database in Supabase. Now, besides the URL that I get from here, from Supabase, I also need to key in or copy and paste the service role secret. So, like any integration between any and any systems, you need to have the authentication or the API key. So in this case, the API key is here. Okay. So this is where the secret key I've copied and place it here. Check the authentication is successful. Okay. So as part of setting up a Supabase vector store or any vector store, you need to tell the vector store what will be the embedding LLM. So here I chose the embedding LLM to be an OpenAI text embedding small, and what it does is that it gets the rows of data from the spreadsheet and then it will chunk it and vectorize it to store in the vector database. And there's also another item that is needed to set up the vector database. It's a data loader. So here the function of this is to tell the vector database to make use of this data loader to load the data that I've mapped, where the spreadsheet will have many columns, but it should be mapped into two columns when it's time to store into the vector database. So from a ETL perspective, this is the transform. This node will transform these columns from the spreadsheet, Google Sheet, into two columns, and this embedding node will do the chunking and vectorization and then store it in the Supabase vector database. So here now the spreadsheet has got 60 rows and the database is currently empty. Let's take a look at the database that we have. So I've set up a database in Supabase called knowledge base. It's right now empty. Okay, there's no data. I've created empty database. So when I execute this workflow, it starts reading data from Google Sheet, and then it starts mapping data. It extracts data and map it into two columns, and using this data loader tool, it starts extracting all these columns of data and chunk it, vectorize it using this embedding LLM, store it into the vector database. So when I go back here, okay, and refresh it, there I can see previously it was empty. Now the data that was from the Google Sheet now is all chunked and vectorized and stored into a vector database. So this is how a vector database look like. So remember just now I have mapped the 5 or 6 columns in the spreadsheet into 2 columns, content and metadata, whereby content contains the few columns of the product, whereas the metadata is JSON. Okay, so this is a category of the product is monitor. And what the embedding LLM OpenAI small model does is that it vectorizes the data. So this is like a coordinate. So this is now the data ingestion pipeline has been successfully completed. Data has now been from a spreadsheet has been ingested, mapped, chunk, vectorized, and stored into a vector database. And this is the first part of the RAG building process called data ingestion pipeline.